Good morning, Wabash. Speaking today at Pioneer Chapel is Brady Quackenbush with his talk titled Good Days and How to Have Them. Brady Quackenbush graduated from Wabash in 2018, majoring in economics and Spanish. He was a member of the Sphinx Club at the college and served in leadership roles for College Mentors for Kids, the Pre-Law Society, and the IFC. He studied abroad as a junior in Valencia, Spain, and is a brother of Beta Theta Pi. He currently in his third year of law school at IU McKinney and plans to practice in Shelby County after taking the bar this summer. He is originally from Fishers, Indiana, and now lives in New Palestine with his wife, Katie, and his dog, Hubble. Please give a warm welcome for Brady Quackenbush.
Good morning, Wabash. I'd like to thank the Sphinx Club for inviting me to campus today, and thank you all for being here. It's an honor I hoped to receive one day when I sat up in those beta seats and down in the Sphinx Club section, but I honestly didn't expect it would happen this soon. I got the chance to speak from this podium once as a Rhine. I delivered a short statement about Justice Thurgood Marshall for a Black History Month chapel talk, but I don't think it holds a candle to the MXI's recent talk for Black History Month here a few weeks ago. I want to commend those students for that talk. I've seen some good talks here, and I've watched alumni from my own time in person and online give their speeches here. The standard I'm looking to for today is Professor Hollander's talk. I think in 2017, he brought up my Rhine brother and good friend Ephraim Shadid, wearing a suit and sunglasses with La Vie en Rose playing in the background. He introduced Professor Hollander in French. That's a guy who can get the attention of a room. I thought I just might start with some stories. One of the days that sticks out most in my memory from my time here took place in February of 2016. I was in my second year. I was sitting upstairs at Detchen in a seat overlooking the International Hall, wrapping up work on an assignment. I finished up and headed for the door, hoping to get back to Beta before lunch got cold, and from the Detchen steps, the mall seemed strangely empty given the time of day. Instead of seeing students on the mall in front of Sparks, campus was empty. There were some students staring out of the windows of the library as I crossed the mall, and some had their phones out. I felt like I was in some kind of dystopian universe. It didn't help that it was my Rhineship semester also, and my sense of normalcy had long gone by the wayside. Not knowing any better, with my placard advertising that night's basketball tilt against the school down south, I proceeded to jingle-jangle my way across the mall and back to the Palace at 513 West Wabash Avenue. Those who know me won't be surprised to hear I had not checked my phone or email that morning. I was surprised to learn upon returning to the house that the campus was in a state of lockdown. There were armed guards on campus investigating an active criminal matter with riot gear and all. Those who remember the day might recall the general state of confusion on campus. I remember one story in particular about a professor who, upon seeing armed officers, rightfully fearing for his safety, took off across campus that way, only to be chased down and tackled by one of those officers. Over at Old 513, we battened down the hatches with the exception of one of my brothers who was waving out the third floor windows trying to get the attention of a news helicopter. But eventually things settled down and campus was deemed secure. So it left the question, are we going to play DePaul tonight? The uncertainty of the day started to fade away, but the half-hour drive south still felt strange. I mean, I personally always feel a little bit nauseous as I approach Greencastle, but this time it was different. The game tipped off down there, and it seemed like we fought an uphill battle all day long. We trailed by 5 at the half, and regulation ended tied at 92. The first overtime ended in a tie, and so did the second. Sadly, the third overtime did not, and the other school ended up winning 114-110. There was a whole lot of Wabash always fights that night, and it's a chant that never wears out, although I do believe we shouldn't only use it when we're trailing. It never feels good to lose, especially not to a rival, but simply playing the game that day felt like a win for us. Also, I want to give a shout out to this year's basketball team on their incredible job. As a senior, I had the chance to go to England as part of an immersion course. Professors Himsel and Murillo combined to teach a course on the history of the common law. We flew to London for spring break and had a week packed with tours and sightseeing. We saw Parliament and Westminster Hall, where I stood on the spot where William Wallace from Braveheart was tried. We toured the Royal Courts of Justice, the Inns of Court, got the chance to sit in the seats of the United Kingdom's Supreme Court. Felt like we squeezed a month into a week-long trip, with our days starting bright and early. Luckily, the hotel had the full English breakfast available, toast, beans, and all. We got the chance to take afternoon tea across the street from Shakespeare's Globe Theater, a building I knew from my childhood as part of my mom's Department 56 Christmas Village. We few, our happy few, our band of brothers charged up the hill at Hastings, following the footsteps of William the Conqueror. In the evenings, we followed other footsteps, taking a chance to see what London's pubs had to offer. As someone who enjoys getting to know a city by getting lost in it, I was a huge fan of being able to take out everyone and venture around and get everyone home. One night, my brother Jack Kellerman and I met up with an old friend of his dad's and listened to his stories from when he owned a bar in Camden Town in North London. I'll never forget listening to his tales of the days of the IRA and his takes on Brexit over a few cold pints of cider. Jack and I took a tour of St. Paul's Cathedral, where Diana married Charles, where they held Churchill's funeral, and where Mary Poppins told us we can feed the birds for just 2 pence. Admiral Horatio Nelson, famous in England for his victory at the Battle of Trafalgar, is buried beneath the cathedral. However, on this campus, I believe Admiral Nelson is famous for other reasons. Jack and I find time once a year on the anniversary of the Battle of Hastings to get together for a pint of cider. I treasure that tradition and the memories we made, and I'm going to be forever grateful to Wabash College for allowing me to go abroad not once, but twice. I had a dream last night. I slept in until 10:30 and missed this talk, which wouldn't be a problem if I lived here on campus. I could have slept until 10:53. But I woke up at 7 this morning feeling relieved. It wasn't an incredibly realistic dream, considering I haven't slept until 10:30 since I was here. But it felt real because the hardest part of the entire dream was calling my dad to let him know I missed this. In fact, one of the first things I did at Wabash was to quit something. I attended about a week of football practices here before I realized I wasn't enjoying the game, and honestly, I hadn't for some time. I was playing it because it was the thing to do and where I spent time with friends. Having to call my dad, who's in the Hall of Fame here for baseball, was one of the most conversations I ever had. It's hard to not think of quitting as a failure, but over time I learned to accept that I simply moved on, that life is far too short to spend big chunks of time doing things you don't enjoy. I'm not here to advocate for quitting or giving up, but I will say there are too many productive paths in this world to spend your time walking one that you don't enjoy. After I graduated, I took a job as a project manager at a healthcare company. I was worried that I was burnt out academically, and I had recently lost my stepdad, who was an attorney, so I didn't feel like law school was the path to go right away. Money was tight, and the job offer was too good to turn down. So I packed my bags and moved north to Madison, Wisconsin. If you've never been, you should go. It is good cheese and beer on every corner, and for the 3 months out of the year that you don't freeze, the lakes are beautiful. But I wasn't happy at my job. And throughout life, I've been blessed to pick up things fairly quickly, but things weren't clicking where I was at. I worked long hours and traveled a lot, and I've enjoyed plenty of things in life that I'm bad at. Golf is the first thing that comes to mind. I'm sure plenty of you can relate. I also know there's a few things that I'm good at and don't enjoy. I think back to Calc 2 over in Goodrich as a freshman. fit that category. My new job, though, fell into that dark space of the Venn diagram where my lack of talent overlapped with my lack of interest. I'd like to stand here and tell you that I stuck it out and adapted and made the most of it like a good Wabash man should, but the honest truth is that I went and failed at something after I graduated. I left the job after about a half year, retook the LSAT, worked at an office supply store, worked at a marine contractor, and applied to schools. Eventually things worked out and I got a great offer to go home to Indianapolis at IU McKinney. And I was glad to return home, but couldn't help but think that I should have gone to school right away. I'm not really sure I felt academically refreshed after that year, but over time, I was glad I took that year to go north. My wife calls that year her study abroad in Wisconsin. I bet on myself and came up short, but I want any of you considering that gap year to know that you won't lose your passion for what you really want to do if it's meant to be. So go for it and don't be afraid to fail. I'm a recently married man. My wife Katie's here today in the front row. We just bought a house together, and in the process of moving, I've somehow replaced my pot. I meant to wear it today, but it's in a box somewhere. She's my rock, and she loves Wabash too, although it did take me a while to sell her on it. She visited a few times when I was a senior, and on her first visit, I remember how overwhelmed she was when it seemed like everyone on campus knew her name and her story. But that's just who we are, isn't it? We're overly welcoming and aggressively kind, almost to a fault. A big reason I came here was that I felt like everyone looked you in the eye when you talked to them and gave you a firm handshake when you met them. We dream big dreams and we set very ambitious goals. And we have so many resources at our fingertips. We've seen so many people go before us and do great things. So it's no wonder that that expectation of success can often drive us to a breaking point. I knew 2 Wabash men here who took their lives while they were students. There are others who, while here or soon after graduation, fell into substance abuse issues. I want to make this point very clear. Reach out and get help if you feel like you're collapsing under the weight of what you're carrying. Ever since I enrolled at Wabash, I had dreams of going to a top 10 law school. I had the grades, but I couldn't get past the LSAT, the law school admissions test. Every time I took a practice test and saw a score that wouldn't get me into my dream school, my heart sank a little bit more. I drilled myself on it constantly, but couldn't move the needle. And I felt less valuable each time and found it harder and harder just to get out of bed in the morning as I was approaching my senior year when I would have to figure out my future. After a few weeks of feeling increasingly worthless, I took the short walk over to the basement of the chapel here, where counseling offices used to be. I realize they've moved now. And just that short walk seemed so long, but that first conversation and just getting it off my chest made it infinitely easier to then talk to my inner circle and other people about what I was going through. Keeping up with your mental health isn't a quick fix situation or a one-time thing. It's a continual process, it's maintenance, but it's well worth the continued effort. Please seek help if you're feeling depressed or hurt. Tell your friends to do so if you can see them hurting. It can be hard, especially because so many of us Wabash men hide it so well, but take the time to check in on your friends. We're a college that pays much more attention to tradition than most others. It's easy to feel like every tradition on campus has existed here since 1832 and remained unchanged. On my visit here as a high schooler, my dad, an alum, stepped on the seal in the library because that wasn't here when he was around. The tour guide didn't make him get down and do push-ups or kiss it or anything, but he was surprised to see that something that he didn't know about was a staunch tradition now on campus. I saw chapel sing change as a student here as the W shifted from a mark of shame to a badge of honor overnight. And even the traditionalists among the student body fell silent in their complaints when reviewing the history found that the W actually was supposed to be something that you earned before it was ever shaved into the back of anyone's head. Signs of old Wabash hang around. I've always really respected the Fidelts for keeping around the green freshman pots. And air raids harken us back to the days of the Navy V-12 program. It's hard to look anywhere around and not see something that's steeped in history and tradition. Chapel itself is a time-honored tradition. Once a mandatory religious service and later an open forum for members of campus to speak their minds, it now gives alumni like me and other folks a chance to tell stories and share wisdom. When I first became a Rhine for Sphinx Club, I was proud to sit in the reserved rows and being able to wear one of the two hats that you're allowed to wear in the chapel by rule. I would kind of judge people who wore baseball caps or other hats in here, thinking it was disrespectful. But at the same time, I noticed a lot of people sitting in the front rows spitting tobacco into cups and bottles. So, I figured if I was going to be the reverence police in the chapel, I ought to start with the group sitting down front. Because the biggest changes in life and the best ones tend to start by looking in the mirror. I stand before you today as an alumnus, but like most of you, I'm still a student. I'm in my third year at IU McKinney downtown, set to graduate in May and take the bar exam this summer. I have many of the same anxieties and fears that you may have. I don't feel like I have quite enough real-world experience to sit here and tell you all how to live your lives. I think most people who claim to have life figured out are probably trying to sell you something. But that being said, I'll share some knowledge from my great-grandmother, Dorothy Holly, who lived a full life and passed just a few days before her 95th birthday. Even in her later years, she'd go bowling with friends, cut her own grass, and keep several backup cases of beer in the basement in case any of her neighbors ran out and couldn't make it to the store. I keep this small piece of paper at my desk at home with her life advice on it. It reads, "Today, have I done something productive, done something for someone else, done something fun? If yes, then today was a good day." And I found that her 3 steps are just about all the advice I need to get by. I think it matches with our own mission statement pretty well. Doing something productive often requires effective leadership. Doing something for someone else will just about always check the boxes for acting responsibly and living humanely. Doing something fun? I think anybody who's been involved in planning a social event on this campus, 900 men in the rural Midwest, knows that having fun at Wabash can tend to require critical thinking. I just want to quickly thank the Wabash men in my family. My dad and uncle came here before me, Tom Quackenbush and Rick Stoltz, classes of 88 and 91. They made the decision to come here so easy. This was the first college I ever visited. Our high school gave us 1 day as a freshman to go and see a college, and I took the chance to go see Wabash as a 15-year-old, and it felt like home. I remember standing on the Detchen steps, same ones I stood on as a Rhine, and looked across campus and looked at the flag in the chapel and just about made my mind up then. After I made my decision, my cousin Drew Stoltz also came here and graduated. My brother Grant Quackenbush graduated last spring, and my cousin Charles Bach is here now. We all walked different paths here, certainly, but I can attest to the fact that we all love Wabash. My mom and grandma are here as well. Both are mothers of Wabash men. I could have made this talk about them, but I think I would have kept you well over time into your afternoon classes. They're 2 of the most wonderful people in the world. Thank you all again for your time today. I'm incredibly proud to call this college my alma mater. I'm not surprised to see that this place keeps improving and impressing year after year. And although this place is steeped in tradition, we all know that we do ourselves a disservice to remain the same. I hope that you all continue to improve what works and remove what doesn't. Support one another. Check in on your brothers. Do something productive. Do something for someone else. And do something fun. Conduct yourself as a gentleman at all times. God bless Wabash College.